When I speak of awakening, I do not mean a fleeting moment of inspiration, nor a passing fascination with the spiritual. I mean the shattering of the old frame through which you saw the world, the dissolution of illusions you once held as absolute. It is an earthquake in the psyche, a tearing down of structures that no longer serve, and the beginning of a journey into the depths of the self. And when this occurs, you may look upon your life and find that the activities which once brought joy, passion, even obsession, now feel strangely empty. The books you once devoured gather dust. The hobbies that filled your evenings lose their color. The pursuits that defined you seem shallow. And you ask yourself, what is wrong with me? Have I lost my spark? I tell you, nothing is wrong. In fact, everything is proceeding as it must. For you are not losing interest in life. You are losing interest in the ego's version of life. You are awakening to a deeper current, and in this current, the amusements of the former self cannot satisfy. Before awakening, hobbies often function as compensations. A man who feels powerless in his daily life may devote himself to mastering a game, or collecting objects, or climbing mountains, because these activities soothe the wound of inadequacy. A woman who feels unseen may take refuge in artistic displays, in music, in public performance, not always for the art itself, but to heal the shadow of neglect. These are not wrong, but they are often unconscious. They are bandages upon wounds not yet faced. But when awakening comes, the bandages fall away. The psyche insists on truth. Compensations no longer hold their power. The old hobbies, tied to the ego and its unhealed fragments, lose their charm. And this can feel like death. It is the death of false identity. I have seen many souls in this condition, bewildered, restless, fearing they have fallen into depression. They say, "Doctor, I can no longer paint. I can no longer play. I feel nothing when I do what I once loved." And I tell them, this is the call of the self. The self is redirecting your energy. You are being emptied so that you may be filled anew. Understand, hobbies are not merely pastimes. They are symbolic expressions of psychic energy. What you pursue outwardly mirrors what you seek inwardly. When that inward need changes, the outer expression fades. The painter who no longer paints may be moving toward inner vision rather than outer display. The reader who no longer devours novels may be preparing to write his own story. The musician who loses passion for performance may be called to silence, to listen to the music of the soul. Awakening does not rob you of joy. It transforms your relationship to joy. What once entertained you no longer suffices, because you now seek meaning, depth, authenticity. You seek not distraction, but integration. And integration demands the sacrifice of shallow pleasures for profound encounters. You may feel guilty, as though you are betraying the younger self who loved these things. But see it not as betrayal, but as evolution. The child outgrows toys, not because toys are evil, but because they no longer meet the level of growth. So too with the awakened soul. The hobbies of the former ego no longer match the vibration of the emerging self. Do not force yourself back into them. Do not cling to what is falling away. To do so is to resist the flow of individuation, to hold on to a mask that is dissolving. Instead, observe. Let yourself drift in the emptiness. It is in this emptiness that the new archetypes stir. I call this the shifting of archetypal dominance. Before awakening, perhaps you lived under the archetype of the performer, seeking applause, delighting in spectacle, or the achiever, hungry for progress, for skill, for victory. These archetypes are not evil, but they belong to the ego's game. After awakening, a new archetype rises: the seeker, the sage, the healer. These demand different activities, different pursuits. And until they make themselves known, you will feel disoriented. The danger here is to mistake this transition for despair. Many souls, feeling the emptiness, rush back into old hobbies with desperation, or seek new distractions to fill the void. But this void is sacred. It is the womb of transformation. To fill it prematurely is to abort the process of individuation. You ask, then what shall I do? Sit in idleness? I say, yes, sit in the silence, but not as idleness. Sit as a listener to your own soul. Journal your dreams. Walk in solitude. Let synchronicities guide you. Pay attention to the subtle pulls, the unexpected interest, the quiet joy, the flicker of fascination. These are the seeds of your new self. In time, you will find that your interests return, but in altered form. The painter paints not for applause, but for revelation. The reader reads not to escape, but to integrate. The athlete trains not to dominate, but to embody discipline and flow. The hobbies become sacraments of the self, not toys of the ego. This is the path of individuation. Awakening is not merely the deigning of light, but the shedding of false skins. If you have lost interest in your hobbies, rejoice, for you have shed another skin. Something new is being born. Do not panic when joy disappears from old places. Joy has not died, it has moved. It awaits you in the undiscovered chambers of your soul. Your task is not to revive the old flame, but to follow the sparks of the new. So I say again, nothing is wrong. The emptiness you feel is the doorway to wholeness. Walk through it with trust. And if these words stir something in you, I ask you to stay with us here in Inner Alchemy. Subscribe for what you have felt alone, countless others feel in silence. Share your own experience in the comments. You will find that your story may unlock someone else's awakening. And in this way, even our dialogue here becomes part of the great work of individuation. When I examine the life of the modern individual, I see that hobbies are rarely random. They are almost always the manifestation of an inner archetype, a pattern so ancient it precedes the individual personality. You may believe you picked up chess because you enjoyed strategy, or painting because you liked colors, or music because it soothed you. But behind each of these stands an archetypal figure, whispering in your unconscious ear, guiding your hand to the instrument. The brush, the board. The archetype of the explorer manifests in those who crave new experiences. The traveler, the collector, the one who learns languages and takes up every new fad. Their hobbies mirror their need to expand into the unknown. The archetype of the performer reveals itself in those who thrive on being seen, on expressing beauty, skill, or talent. The singer, the actor, the painter who longs for an audience. These serve the inner drive to be mirrored back in the eyes of others. The archetype of the achiever governs the competitor, the gamer, the athlete, the one who must prove mastery through measurable victory. These archetypes are not inherently negative. They are energies, patterns of psychic life necessary at certain stages of development. They shape our hobbies, our passions, our identities. But when awakening comes, these archetypes may crumble. Why? Because awakening is not about feeding the ego. It is about the birth of the self. And the self cannot be contained in archetypes designed only for the ego's gratification. So the explorer who once sought joy in endless novelty suddenly feels exhausted by travel, by collecting, by chasing experiences. They discover that no new city, no new language, no new hobby fills the hunger that gnaws within. They lose interest, and they call it boredom. But it is not boredom. It is the collapse of an archetype. The performer who once loved applause now finds it hollow. The music no longer stirs. The stage no longer excites. They may still sing, but the echo of meaning is gone. They wonder, why do I feel nothing? They are witnessing the death of an old god, the archetype of performance. The achiever, once addicted to the thrill of winning, now feels strangely indifferent to medals, trophies, and scores. The game continues, but its spell is broken. The ego has been dethroned. And here's the truth that may sting. When an archetype loses its hold, it feels as though life itself has lost color. The one who is driven by the explorer archetype feels a terrifying stillness. The one who served the performer archetype feels invisible. The achiever feels purposeless. These are symptoms of awakening, not failures of character. It is at this stage that many become disoriented. Some spiral into depression. Some try desperately to resurrect the old joys, to force themselves back into hobbies that have died. But forcing is futile. Once an archetype has collapsed, it cannot be revived. This collapse is necessary. It is the stripping away of lesser gods so that the self may appear. The self does not play games of ego. The self seeks wholeness. And wholeness demands that the energy once spent on shallow pursuits be redirected inward, toward integration, toward meaning, toward service. Consider the caterpillar. It spends its life devouring leaves, crawling endlessly. One might call leaf eating its hobby. Then a transformation comes. In the cocoon, the organs of digestion dissolve, and the creature is stripped of all it once was. The caterpillar no longer eats leaves, and if it could think, it might despair. Why have I lost my purpose? Why do I no longer desire what once sustained me? But it is not death. It is metamorphosis. So too with you. The collapse of your hobbies is not the end of joy. It is the preparation for a greater joy. I tell you plainly, do not grieve the old archetypes. Do not chase them. Instead, wait in patience for the new archetype that seeks to emerge. The seeker archetype may call you into philosophy, into spiritual study, into contemplation of the mysteries. The sage archetype may push you toward teaching, writing, guiding others. The healer archetype may lead you into service, compassion, art that restores rather than entertains. These new archetypes are higher orders of the psyche. They do not serve the ego. They serve the self. And when they awaken, new interests, new passions, new hobbies of a different quality will emerge. If you are in this transition, let me assure you, it is natural. You are not broken. You are not empty. You are being repatterned by the psyche itself. Pause with me now. Reflect. Which archetype governed your former hobbies? Was it the explorer, forever restless? The performer, forever seeking eyes to witness? The achiever, forever striving? And can you feel how those forces have weakened? This reflection is not idle. It is the first step in seeing that your boredom is sacred. It is a signal that the old archetype has run its course and the new is yet to be born. In this interval, in this sacred emptiness, do not rush. Journal, dream, watch for synchronicity, for the self will guide you, if you will but listen. And if this resonates with you, I invite you, share in the comments your own story of lost hobbies after awakening. Others here will see themselves in your words, and together we will discover that this path is not lonely, but shared. Subscribe to stay with us, because the dialogue we are weaving here is not entertainment. It is alchemy, transforming emptiness into meaning. I recall many who came to me burdened by this strange emptiness, frightened by their sudden loss of passion for the things that once gave them meaning. They believed themselves broken or depressed or somehow less alive. Yet when I listened, I understood that they were not in decline, but in transformation. There was a man, a lawyer by profession, who came to me in despair. For 20 years, he had been an avid chess player. His evenings were consumed by strategy, tournaments, and endless analysis of games. He told me chess had been his sanctuary, his escape, his pride. But after what he called his awakening, a sudden awareness of the emptiness of his achievements and the illusion of control, he found himself unable to move a single piece. The board that once thrilled him now looked like meaningless wood and plastic. He said, "Doctor, I feel hollow. What is wrong with me? Am I losing my mind?" I told him, "No, you are not losing your mind. You are losing the archetype that governed you. Chess was not just a game for you. It was the theater in which your ego sought mastery. Now that you have glimpsed the deeper self, the ego's theater has closed. Do not force yourself to play. Wait for the new stage to open." Months later, he discovered a new passion: writing, not legal briefs, but reflections on truth, on justice, on the deeper currents of life. The same mind that once thrived on strategy found new life in exploring symbols, dreams, and philosophy. Chess had fallen away, but the energy behind it had not died. It had been redirected. Another woman came to me, a musician. From childhood, she had been a performer, her life revolving around the piano and the stage. She told me, "When I play now, I feel nothing. The applause feels empty. Even the music feels hollow. I cannot bear it. Music was my life. Now I do not know who I am." I said to her, "Perhaps you are not called to abandon music, but to transform your relationship to it. Until now, you played for recognition, for affirmation. Perhaps the self is calling you to play as prayer, as healing, as inner expression." She resisted at first, but in time she discovered a different music, not on the stage, but in the quiet of small gatherings, in therapeutic settings, in composing pieces that no one else heard. I play not to be seen, but to see myself, not to entertain, but to heal. Her hobby had not died. It had evolved into something higher. I share these stories so you may see yourself in them. The emptiness you feel when hobbies collapse is not a void of meaning. It is the pause between identities, the silence between notes, the night before dawn. Often hobbies serve the function of numbing us against our shadow. The man who fears insignificance devotes himself obsessively to a skill, so he may feel important. The woman who fears abandonment clings to activities that ensure she is surrounded by others. These hobbies are masks. When awakening pulls the masks away, the hobby collapses. The shadow stands revealed. But if you face the shadow, something remarkable happens. The hobby is reborn, not as compensation, but as authentic expression. Take, for example, a young man who told me he could no longer enjoy painting. As a child, he had painted to please his parents, to win approval. As an adult, he painted to be admired. But after awakening, he felt repelled by the very canvas. He said, "It feels dishonest." I encouraged him to confront the shadow, to acknowledge that his painting was never truly his own, but a performance for love and validation. Once he admitted this truth, he began again. But this time, he painted for no one. He painted his dreams, his fears, his visions. The art that emerged startled him. Raw, powerful, symbolic. He told me, "Now I feel alive when I paint. It is not a hobby anymore. It is a dialogue with my soul." This is the key. Hobbies after awakening must serve the self, not the ego. When the ego rules, the hobby eventually dies. When the self takes over, the hobby becomes a path of individuation. And so I say to you, if you have lost interest in your hobbies, do not despair. Ask yourself, were they born of ego or of self? Were they expressions of compensation or of authenticity? To the one who listens now, perhaps you too feel this emptiness. Perhaps you once delighted in reading novels, in collecting trinkets, in playing games, in endless pursuits that now feel void of meaning. You are not sick. You are not lazy. You are awakening. Do not rush to fill the void. Sit in it. Listen. Watch your dreams. Notice what calls to you quietly. The self rarely shouts. It whispers. And as these words strike a chord in you, I invite you, write in the comments what hobby you have lost since awakening, and what small sparks are beginning to arise in its place. You will see that you are not alone in this transformation. Others here will mirror you. Together, we will see that awakening strips away only what is false, so that what is true may emerge. Subscribe to remain with us in this dialogue. For in inner alchemy, we do not chase the old joys. We seek the new ones, born from the self, born from wholeness. When we speak of hobbies, we must not imagine they are isolated compartments of life. They are woven into the whole fabric of the psyche. And so, when awakening shifts your relationship to these activities, it also shifts your relationship to people, to communities, to pleasures that once seemed essential to your identity. I have seen this countless times. A man who once thrived at social clubs, surrounded by laughter, cards, drinks, and the chatter of friends, suddenly finds himself restless. The very sound of the room grates upon his nerves. What once felt alive now feels false. He wonders if he is losing his capacity for friendship, if he has grown cold. But I tell him, he has not grown cold. He has grown awake. The social rituals were sustained by the ego, by the need to belong, to be admired, to be distracted. When awakening strips away the ego's hunger, the rituals collapse, and the soul hungers for deeper communion, not endless chatter. Another woman I recall loved shopping. She would lose herself in boutiques, in colors and fabrics, in the delight of acquiring new objects. It was her passion, her joy, her very hobby. But after a sudden experience of awakening, a dream that revealed to her the fleetingness of possessions, she could no longer enjoy it. She told me, "When I walk among the stores now, I feel only emptiness. The things shine, but they do not call me." "What has happened to me?" I said to her. "Nothing has been lost. You have simply seen through the veil. The objects no longer promise what they once did. Your soul is preparing you for a different kind of beauty, one not purchased, but discovered within. Awakening transforms not only hobbies, but pleasures. The entertainments of the ego grow hollow. The desire for endless novelty wanes. The craving for shallow connection fades. And in the absence of these, many panic. They say, "I no longer enjoy the things I once loved. I feel nothing. I am empty." But this emptiness is the necessary threshold. It is the desert before the promised land. You cannot cross into wholeness while carrying the toys of the ego. They fall away one by one until you stand strict and bare before the self. Only then can you be clothed in authenticity. Do not confuse this with depression. Depression sinks you into despair with no direction. Awakening emptiness is purposeful. It clears the ground for something new to emerge. Depression says, "Nothing matters." Awakening says, "The old no longer matters. Wait for what does." I must emphasize this. The psyche is wise. It does not strip you of joy to leave you barren. It strips you so that you may be redirected. Every hobby lost, every pleasure faded, every interest dissolved. These are sacrifices upon the altar of the self, and sacrifice is always the prelude to transformation. Look at your relationships. Have you noticed after awakening that the people who once filled your evenings with laughter no longer draw you? That their conversations feel shallow, their pursuits trivial? You are not becoming cruel. You are perceiving differently. You hunger for authenticity, for soul-to-soul connection, not mask-to-mask interaction. It is the same with your hobbies. What once mattered was the performance, the applause, the competition, the distraction. Now what matters is meaning, integration, truth. And until you discover hobbies that align with these, you will feel empty. A man once told me he had lost all interest in music. He had been a devoted listener, attending concerts weekly, collecting records obsessively. After awakening, he said the sounds felt like noise. I asked him, "What kind of music?" He replied, "The loud, the spectacular, the fashionable." I smiled and said, "Perhaps the self no longer needs spectacle. Wait, you may find a new music, one that whispers rather than shouts." Months later, he discovered Gregorian chant. He discovered Tibetan bowls. He discovered the silence between notes. Music returned, but it was not the old music. It was deeper, more archetypal. His hobby was reborn, but in service to the self. This is the pattern. Awakening dissolves the surface, but it never leaves you with nothing. It prepares you for depth. So, if you are listening to me now and wondering why you no longer enjoy the conversations, the hobbies, the pleasures of your past, I tell you, rejoice. You are being called into authenticity. The false is falling away. The true is waiting. Pause here with me. Reflect. Which of your pleasures have gone silent? Which of your hobbies have turned to dust in your hands? Do not mourn them. They were stepping stones. You have crossed them. Now wait for the new ground to appear. It will come, not in noise, but in whispers. And if you resonate with these words, I invite you, share in the comments the one pleasure or hobby you lost after awakening. You will find you are not alone. Others will echo your story. And as you subscribe and continue with us here in Inner Alchemy, you will see how emptiness is not the end, but the beginning of individuation. There is a danger I must warn you about. When the old hobbies and pleasures collapse after awakening, the ego resists. It fears emptiness, for emptiness is death to the ego. And so it urges you to force yourself back into what no longer holds life. This forcing is poison to the psyche. I have seen it many times. A man awakens to the futility of his endless sports competitions. He loses all desire to train, to win, to conquer. Yet terrified of seeming lazy, he forces himself back to the gym, back to the field, back to the game. He pushes his body, but his soul resists. Soon, he grows bitter, resentful, exhausted. He says, I am disciplined, but joy has abandoned me. He does not realize he is trying to revive a corpse. Another woman awakened from her obsession with social gatherings. She no longer desired the parties, the endless dinners, the clinking of glasses. But her friends pressed her, her family worried, and she feared their judgment. So she forced herself to attend. She sat among them, smiled politely, and felt a void inside. She whispered to me, Doctor, I'm surrounded by people, yet I feel utterly alone. She was not broken, she was awakening. But in resisting the emptiness, she prolonged her suffering. You must understand, when a hobby dies, it is because the archetype behind it has withdrawn its energy. No amount of effort will bring it back. To try is to create neurosis. You become divided, outwardly performing, inwardly hollow. This division is dangerous. It breeds anxiety, depression, even physical illness. The psyche does not tolerate lies for long. It demands truth. When you persist in hobbies that no longer hold truth, you betray the self. This betrayal manifests as unease, as emptiness, as dis-ease in body and mind. You must learn to trust the emptiness. It is not a void without purpose. It is the womb of the new. Just as the caterpillar cannot crawl once the cocoon forms, you cannot play the old games once awakening has begun. The cocoon feels like death, but it is life transforming itself. Do not mistake this for failure. The ego will whisper, you are lazy. You are wasting your life. You must go back to what you know. But listen carefully. That voice is not truth. It is fear. The true voice of the self is quieter. It says, wait, watch, listen. Something new is coming. When I sat with patients who mourned their lost passions, I often told them this: do not dig up what has died. Sit beside the grave until you see what is reborn. At first, they resisted. They wanted answers now, meaning now, hobbies now. But in time, as they surrendered, synchronicities began to appear. Dreams whispered new directions. Strange coincidences guided them to unfamiliar paths. And there, slowly, joy returned. But of a new kind. Purer. Deeper. I tell you, the hobbies of the ego may vanish, but the self always provides new expressions. They may not look like hobbies at all. They may look like callings. They may look like service. They may look like destiny. If you have lost interest in what once defined you, resist the urge to force yourself back. Instead, embrace the emptiness. Walk in silence. Trust the process. The psyche is wiser than the ego, and if these words stir something in you, share in the comments what you have tried to force yourself back into and how it felt. You will discover others here who did the same, and together you will see the futility of reviving the dead. Subscribe so that you do not walk this path alone, for here in Inner Alchemy, we are learning to honor the silence, the void, the sacred emptiness that prepares us for rebirth. When the surface of life grows silent, when your hobbies fade, your passions dissolve, and your ego feels adrift, the unconscious begins to speak more loudly. And it speaks, above all, through dreams. Many who came to me during this stage of awakening told me their nights grew strange. Their dreams became more vivid, more symbolic, more insistent. They thought they had lost joy in waking life, but I told them, you have not lost joy. Joy has descended into your dreams. Pay attention. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. And when the ego no longer occupies itself with endless hobbies, the unconscious seizes the opportunity to reveal itself. This is why your dreams at such times are not random. They are maps. They show you what is dying and what is being born. I recall a man who had lost all interest in his beloved fishing trips. For years, every weekend he had lived for the river, the rod, the solitude. But after awakening, he felt nothing but emptiness. Then came the dreams. Night after night, he dreamt of oceans, vast, stormy, teeming with strange creatures. He told me, "Doctor, I do not understand. I no longer fish, but I dream of water every night." I explained, fishing was never only about sport. It was your way of touching the archetype of the unconscious, the great sea of symbols. Now that the hobby has died, the archetype is calling you directly. Your dreams are telling you, go deeper. Do not fish for animals. Fish for meaning. Months later, he began to write poetry inspired by his dreams of the ocean. He said, "The sea has returned to me, not in my hands, but in my words." Another woman had been a passionate gardener. Her flowers were her pride, her joy. Yet awakening left her disinterested, her garden neglected. She thought she had lost herself. But then her dreams began. Visions of forests, of wild landscapes untouched by human hand. She told me, "Doctor, are you sitting?" Yes. I did not feel anything back to myself. So, my friend, did he not tell me, you were never empty now? I no longer wish to tend my garden, but in my sleep, I wander in vast forests. I said, your garden was the ego's way of controlling nature, of creating order. But the self is now showing you wildness, the archetype of untamed life. Follow these dreams. They are calling you to release control and embrace the vastness within. She later began hiking, exploring wild places, studying ecology. The garden hobby had died, but her soul's connection to nature deepened beyond measure. Dreams reveal where your energy is moving. They may shock you, disturb you, confuse you, but they are never meaningless. They are the whisper of the self, hinting at the new archetype waiting to emerge. If you are in the emptiness now, losing your hobbies and your pleasures, I urge you, keep a dream journal. Write down every fragment, every image, no matter how absurd. In time, patterns will appear. You will see symbols repeating, themes developing. They show you what the psyche is preparing. Do not dismiss them. One dream can hold more truth than 100 hobbies. A dream can tell you what no book, no teacher, no friend can reveal. In dreams, you may meet forgotten figures, an old teacher, a childhood friend, even a celebrity or mythical being. Each is a symbol, a piece of your psyche seeking recognition. Pay attention to them. They may show you the new direction of your energy. During awakening, when the outer world grows barren, the inner world grows fertile. This is why you must not fear the emptiness. It is in the silence of your hobbies that your dreams can finally be heard. Perhaps you have noticed this yourself. Have your dreams grown stranger since you lost interest in what once occupied you? Have you seen symbols you cannot explain? If so, you are not alone. Countless others experience this shift. Share your dreams in the comments, for in doing so, you may recognize patterns across many lives. You will see that the same archetypes visit us all, wearing different masks. Subscribe to remain with us, for in Inner Alchemy, we will not only speak of hobbies and pleasures, but of dreams, shadows, and archetypes. For in dreams lies the treasure map of the soul, guiding you from emptiness to purpose. And I tell you, when you honor your dreams, when you follow their symbols, new passions will arise. They may not look like hobbies as the ego defines them. They may look like callings, vocations, destinies. But they will fill the emptiness with fire. When the ego's games fall away and your old hobbies no longer call to you, life does not leave you barren. If you are attentive, you will notice something curious begins to happen. Coincidences appear, small at first, but meaningful. Encounters, symbols, numbers, events align in ways too exact to be dismissed. This is what I called synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence that reveals the hand of the unconscious in the outer world. You may wonder why I speak of synchronicity when we began with hobbies. But you must understand, hobbies were once the ego's way of finding meaning, of feeling alive. After awakening, when hobbies collapse, the psyche begins to offer you a different form of play. Not in private pastime, but in the patterns of reality itself. I recall a man who had lost all interest in his stamp collection. For 30 years, he had devoted himself to it, cataloging, trading, hunting rare editions. When the passion died, he felt lost, purposeless. Then, he began noticing repeating numbers everywhere, on receipts, clocks, addresses. He told me, "Doctor, I think I'm going mad. Everywhere I look, I see the same numbers." I told him, "You are not mad. The unconscious has withdrawn its energy from your collection and redirected it into the world around you. These numbers are the new symbols. They are calling you to pay attention." In time, he discovered that the numbers coincided with anniversaries, with deaths, with turning points. He came to see them not as madness, but as guidance. Another patient, a woman who had once lived for her theater group, could no longer bear the stage after awakening. She mourned the loss, but soon she began meeting strangers who quoted the very lines of poetry she had loved. In unexpected places, on trains, in cafes, even in casual conversations overheard. She told me, "It is as though the words find me, even though I no longer seek the stage." I said to her, "The archetype of the performer has not died. It has transformed. Now, instead of speaking through rehearsed lines, it speaks through synchronicities. It whispers in the world itself, reminding you that your life is the stage, and every encounter is performance of a deeper kind. Synchronicity is the new hobby of the self. When the ego no longer finds joy in games and distractions, the self begins to weave meaning into reality itself. The hobby was inward, private, contained. Synchronicity is outward, collective, expansive. It demands you watch, listen, notice. It requires no tools, no objects, no collection. Only awareness. I tell you, if you have lost interest in your hobbies, do not despair. Begin to watch your days with the eyes of a dreamer. Notice what repeats. Notice what arrives unexpectedly. Notice the stranger's words, the book that falls from the shelf, the number that returns, the symbol that follows you. These are the self's new game. And in them lies more meaning than in 1,000 pastimes. The hobbies you once clung to were shadows of the greater play. Now you are being invited to join that greater play, the dialogue between your soul and the world. Do not dismiss it as chance. Chance is the word the ego uses to dismiss mystery. Synchronicity is the language of the self. And if you learn to read it, you will never be bored again. For every day will become alive with significance. Think of it. You may lose your love for chess, but now the pieces move in the world itself. You may abandon the theater, but now the world itself becomes your stage. You may leave behind music, but now the notes appear in the patterns of life. This is why I say the death of hobbies is not the end of meaning. It is the expansion of meaning. What was once confined to an activity is now offered in the whole of reality. Perhaps you have already noticed such patterns. If you have, I invite you to share them in the comments. Speak of the numbers you see, the symbols that follow you, the uncanny meetings that stir your heart. In this sharing, you will see that synchronicity is not madness, but a collective language spoken by the self to all who awaken. And if this stirs something in you, I ask you, subscribe and remain in this journey with us. For here in Inner Alchemy, we do not dismiss coincidence. We listen to it, we learn from it, and we discover that when hobbies fall away, life itself becomes the new canvas. I must pause here and make a distinction, for it is vital. The loss of interest in hobbies after awakening can easily be mistaken for depression. Many come to me trembling, saying, "Doctor, am I depressed? Have I lost my vitality? Is this the beginning of decline?" No, not always. You must learn to distinguish between the sacred emptiness of transformation and the heavy darkness of depression. They are not the same. Depression drags you downward, steals your energy, suffocates your will. It is heavy, oppressive, without horizon. It says nothing matters. Nothing will ever matter. It extinguishes hope. It isolates you. Awakening emptiness, by contrast, is lighter, though at times confusing. It is not despairing, but spacious. It says, what once mattered no longer matters. Wait, and something new will appear. It strips you, yes, but it does so to prepare. It does not extinguish the flame. It removes the old fuel so that the flame can burn anew. The difference lies in direction. Depression collapses inward and downward. Awakening emptiness opens outward, though you may not yet see where it leads. Depression is finality. Awakening is transition. I recall a patient who came to me certain he was depressed. He had lost interest in sports, in music, in his friends. He slept more, withdrew from his activities. But when I listened, I heard no despair. I heard curiosity. He said, "I feel empty, but I sense something is coming. I do not know what, but I cannot go back." This was not depression. This was transformation. His soul was redirecting energy. Contrast this with another who sat before me with slumped shoulders and vacant eyes. He said, "Nothing matters. I want nothing. I feel nothing. I see no future." This was not awakening. This was depression, and it required compassion, treatment, and care of a different kind. It is dangerous to confuse the two. If you call awakening depression, you may medicate the very process meant to liberate you. If you call depression awakening, you may neglect the help you need. Discernment is essential. How then to discern? Ask yourself, do I feel hopeless or do I feel expectant? Do I sense an ending or do I sense a beginning hidden in the ending? Does my emptiness feel heavy and dead or spacious and alive with possibility? These are subtle distinctions, but the soul knows them. Depression is suffocating. Awakening is cleansing. Depression imprisons. Awakening empties. If you are listening now and fear you are depressed, I say, look closer. Do not label too quickly. Sit with your feeling. Is there even the faintest spark of curiosity? Even the smallest sense that something new may come? If so, it is not despair. It is transition. And remember this, in awakening, the hobbies of the past may fade, but your dreams grow more alive. Synchronicities appear. Symbols whisper. These are signs of movement, not stagnation. Depression does not bring such signs. It brings only silence and heaviness. I say this not to diminish depression, for it is real and serious. I say it to honor awakening, so it is not mistaken for illness. The psyche has its seasons. Depression is winter without promise. Awakening is winter before spring. Do not let fear convince you that you are sick, when in truth, you are transforming. And if you are uncertain, speak to others. Seek counsel. Share your story. In community, clarity arises. You may find that what you thought was depression is in fact the sacred silence of rebirth. So I ask you, those listening now, have you felt this emptiness? Did you fear it was depression, only to later see it was awakening? Share below. Your words may relieve another's fear. Subscribe and remain with us, for in Inner Alchemy we speak not only of light, but of shadows. Not only of joy, but of the strange silence that precedes it. For all of it belongs to the process of individuation. When the old hobbies fall away, when your passions collapse like houses of cards, what you are truly encountering is not merely boredom, but the shadow. The shadow is everything within you that you have not yet faced. The fears, the desires, the impulses, the truths that your ego has deemed unacceptable. To live only in the ego is to live only half a life, for the ego cuts away parts of you and throws them into the dark. But the shadow does not disappear. It waits. It knocks from below. And often, hobbies are the ways by which you silence that knocking. The man who fears his own insignificance may devote himself obsessively to a hobby that proves his mastery. He polishes his car, competes in tournaments, climbs mountains, not always for the joy of it, but to drown out the whisper, "You are nothing." The woman who fears her loneliness may bury herself in clubs, in gatherings, in constant activity, not for the love of company, but to silence the voice, "You are alone." Another who fears his anger may take up hobbies of peace, of endless relaxation, of distraction, hoping never to see the volcano within. In this way, hobbies become masks. They are disguises the ego wears to keep the shadow hidden. But when awakening comes, the masks fall. The old hobbies lose their flavor because they were never truly yours. They were the ego's defense against the shadow. Awakening strips away the defenses. Suddenly, you are left with silence. And in that silence, the shadow rises. This is why so many feel restless, agitated, even frightened when their passions vanish. It is not merely loss. It is confrontation. You are being asked to meet yourself, the whole of yourself, not only the parts you like. One man came to me distraught. He had been a tireless runner, devoting hours each day to pounding the pavement. But now, he said, I feel no desire to run. I sit at home, restless. I feel darkness in me. I do not understand. I asked him about his dreams. He confessed he dreamt of wild animals, wolves, bears, predators, chasing him. I said, you ran not only on the road, but from yourself. Running was your hobby and your escape. Now that it has collapsed, the animals of your shadow are catching up. He looked at me in horror, then relief. He understood. His hobby had kept him from facing his anger, his aggression, his primal power. When he finally faced these, when he integrated them, his energy shifted. He no longer ran to escape. He ran when he chose to, but the compulsion was gone. The hobby was redeemed, not as escape, but as authentic expression. Another woman told me she no longer enjoyed her endless reading of romantic novels. She once devoured them, but after awakening, she found them unbearable. I asked her why. She said, they feel false. They make me ache. We explored her shadow and discovered that she had buried her grief from a failed love long ago. The novels had been her way of pretending love was still alive. But when awakening stripped them from her, the grief surfaced. She wept, she raged, and then, slowly, she healed. The novels were no longer needed, for she no longer avoided her shadow. This is the gift of awakening. It tears away the masks and forces you to meet the shadow. Painful, yes, but necessary. For only in integrating the shadow do you become whole. So if you find yourself restless, irritable, empty when your hobbies dissolve, ask, what was I hiding? What truth did this activity protect me from? And dare to face it. You will discover that the shadow is not your enemy. It is your teacher. The anger you feared may become courage. The loneliness you denied may become solitude and strength. The insignificance you fled may become humility and authenticity. When hobbies die, the shadow rises. But if you embrace it, you will find new energy, new authenticity, new life. The hobbies that return will be purified, no longer masks, but mirrors of the self. To those listening now, I ask you, what hobby has fallen from your life, and what shadow might it have hidden? Reflect on this, and if you are willing, share it in the comments. Your honesty may liberate another who trembles before their own shadow. Subscribe and stay with us in Inner Alchemy. For here we do not run from the shadow. We invite it to the table. We learn its language. And in that integration, we discover that emptiness is not the end, but the threshold of wholeness. When the shadow has been faced, when its lessons have been accepted, when the illusions that once drove your hobbies have fallen away, a strange and wonderful thing occurs. New energy begins to rise. At first, it's subtle. You may notice a flicker of curiosity, a gentle pull towards something you never considered before. Perhaps you find yourself intrigued. Oh yes, by an instrument you never learned, a subject you never studied, a place you never visited. Perhaps you feel the sudden urge to write, to paint, to build, to create. These are not distractions. They are the whispers of the self, inviting you to new forms of expression. The passions that emerge after shadow integration, my friend, are different from the hobbies of the ego. They are not compulsive, nor are they masks. They do not exhaust you, nor do they leave you restless. They feel natural, alive, rooted. You do not chase them. They arrive, quietly, but with power. One man, who had lost interest in his endless games of competition, came to me months after his shadow work. He said, "Doctor, I find myself suddenly drawn to gardening. I never cared for it before, but now the soil calls to me." I smiled. His competitive hobbies had been ways of proving his worth, but now, with his shadow of inadequacy faced, his energy flowed into cultivation, into nurturing life. The ego's race had ended. The self's creation had begun. Another woman, who abandoned her obsessive collecting of objects, discovered after integration a passion for teaching children. She said, "I once filled my shelves with treasures. Now I feel joy in filling young minds with wonder." Her hobby had been a way of filling her own emptiness. Once she faced her shadow of neglect, her energy turned outward in service. Her joy was no longer in possession, but in giving. This is the mark of authentic passion. It does not serve the ego's wound. It serves the wholeness of the self. It brings peace, not compulsion. It expands you, not depletes you. I tell you this, after awakening, you may feel barren for a time, but do not mistake the barren field for death. It is lying fallow, waiting to grow a new harvest. And when the seeds sprout, they will not be the old crops. They will be richer, deeper, more nourishing. So how does one allow these authentic passions to arise? By listening, by watching, by refusing to force. They come as synchronicity, as dreams, as whispers. They come in unexpected places. The book you happen to open, the stranger's words, the memory that returns, the small joy that stirs when you least expect it. Do not overlook these sparks. Fan them gently. Do not smother them with expectation. Let them grow. In time, they will reveal themselves as new paths, new joys, new creations. I must emphasize, do not measure these new passions by the ego's standards. Do not ask, will I become great at this? Will I be admired? Will it be useful? These are the old questions. The self does not care for them. The self asks only, does this feel alive? Does this bring wholeness? Does this connect me to the greater pattern of life? You may discover that your new passions are quiet, walking in nature, writing in a journal, listening to silence. Do not despise them. They are holy. Or they may be bold. Speaking, teaching, creating works that reach many. Do not fear them. They are gifts. In either case, they are not hobbies in the old sense. They are expressions of the self, rituals of integration. They will bring joy not because they distract you, but because they align you. To you listening now, I say, do not rush. Let the old fall. Let the new arise. You are not broken. You are transforming. Your emptiness is not punishment. It is preparation. And the passions that await you will be more authentic than anything you have known. Have you already begun to sense them? Have you noticed small sparks? A new interest? A new curiosity? A joy you cannot explain? If so, honor it. And if you have not, be patient. It will come. The self is never silent forever. Share in the comments the first sparks you have noticed. Others will see themselves in your words, and you will see that the birth of authentic passion is not solitary, but universal. Subscribe, for here in Inner Alchemy, we honor not only the collapse, but the rebirth, not only the shadow, but the light that follows it. For in the end, the loss of hobbies is not the loss of life. It is the death of the false and the birth of the true. When new passions rise after the silence of awakening, they come not as toys of the ego, but as instruments of the self. They are not merely hobbies to pass the time. They are callings, threads of destiny woven into the tapestry of your life. You will notice this by the quality of the energy. Old hobbies, when driven by the ego, were fragile. They demanded constant effort, constant feeding. You needed validation, achievement, applause. Without these, the joy faded. But the passions born of awakening require none of this. They sustain themselves because they flow from a deeper source, from the self which is inexhaustible. A man who once wasted hours in shallow competition told me after his transformation, "Doctor, I find myself teaching young men discipline, not through games, but through conversation and mentorship. I never thought of this as a hobby, yet it feels as though I was born for it." This was no pastime. It was his calling. His energy flowed not to entertain himself, but to serve others. Another, who had once spent her life painting for recognition, told me, "Now I paint visions I see in dreams. I do not care if anyone admires them. They feel alive, and when I paint them, I feel whole." Her art had shifted from ego's decoration to self's revelation. This is what happens when the self claims your energy. The personal hobby becomes a universal act. What you create, what you pursue, what you love, it does not remain yours alone. It enters the collective. It becomes part of the world's healing. Individuation, the path of becoming whole, is never a private matter. It always touches the collective. When you integrate shadow, when you align with the self, your actions ripple outward. Your new passions will reflect this. They will carry meaning, not only for you, but for others. This is why I say, the death of ego hobbies is not a loss, but a preparation. You are being emptied of shallow pursuits so that you may be filled with meaningful service. You may still enjoy activities, music, art, study, exploration, but they will not feel like distractions. They will feel like offerings. And in this offering, you will discover joy deeper than any ego hobby ever gave you. Reflect on this. What small sparks have begun to stir in you since your awakening? Do they carry the scent of service? Do they connect you to something larger than yourself? These are signs that they are not hobbies, but callings. Do not shrink from them. Do not say, "I am not qualified. I am not ready." If they arise from the self, they carry their own power. Follow them, step by step. The path will reveal itself. You see, the goal of individuation is not to amuse the ego, but to reveal the self. The self does not play for distraction. The self plays for creation. The self plays for integration. The self plays for wholeness. To those who listen, I ask, have you already felt the shift from hobby to calling? Has something new arisen in you that feels larger than entertainment, larger than yourself? Share it. In your sharing, you may awaken recognition in another. Subscribe For here in Inner Alchemy, we honor these sparks, not as mere pastimes, but as sacred flames. Together we are not hobbyists of the ego, but alchemists of the soul. And I tell you, when you follow these new passions, you will not ask, "How shall I amuse myself?" You will ask, "How shall I live truly? How shall I serve? How shall I create meaning?" This is the path of awakening. This is the buff of destiny. So now we have walked the circle together. We began with the emptiness, that strange silence that follows awakening, when the hobbies and pleasures that once defined you fall lifeless to the ground. We explored the archetypes that governed your old interests, how they collapse when the self calls you deeper. We saw the danger of forcing yourself back into dead pastimes, and we learned to trust the sacred void. We turned to dreams, the nightly theater of the unconscious, where the new archetypes whisper their arrival. We turned to synchronicities, the outer reflections of inner change, showing you that life itself has become the game. We faced the shadow, seeing how hobbies once masked your wounds, and how awakening strips away those masks so you may finally meet yourself. We spoke of integration, of the rebirth of authentic passions, not as distractions, but as callings of the self. And now, as we stand at the close of this dialogue, I tell you the truth plainly. You are not broken because your hobbies have died. You are not lost because your passions have faded. You are being reborn. The psyche is wise. It does not remove joy to leave you barren. It removes what is false so that you may discover what is true. The emptiness you feel is not a grave. It is a womb. The silence is not punishment. It is preparation. The death of hobbies is not the death of meaning. It is the clearing of space for meaning to enter. This is the work of individuation, to shed what no longer serves, to face what has been hidden, to integrate what was divided, and to emerge whole. So I ask you, do not mourn the loss of your old joys. Honor them as stepping stones, but do not chain yourself to them. Walk forward into the silence, into the dreams, into the synchronicities, into the shadow, into the unknown. There, the self awaits you. There, new passions will be born, not fragile hobbies, but sacred flames that illuminate your path and the path of others. And if you are listening now, if you have felt the emptiness, if you have wondered what is wrong with you, hear me. Nothing is wrong. You are awakening. Trust it. Let the old die. Let the new be born. Pause with me. Take a breath. Feel the truth of this in your bones. You are not losing life. You are finding life. You are not losing meaning. You are clearing the space for meaning to arrive. And now I invite you. Share your journey below. Which hobbies have fallen away? What emptiness have you faced? What sparks have begun to stir? In your story, others will find their reflection. And in their stories, you will find yours. Subscribe to remain with us here in Inner Alchemy. For this is not the end of the dialogue. It is only the beginning. Together, we will continue to explore the hidden patterns of the psyche, the mysteries of awakening, the alchemy of transformation. For the self is always calling. And when you follow, when you trust, when you surrender, your life ceases to be a collection of hobbies. It becomes a work of art. And that, my friend, is the true purpose of awakening.